Everybody, welcome to Pro Mindset Podcast. This is your host, Craig Dillman. And I've got a lady today that's our guest who is an athlete. She's an attorney. She's a speaker. She's a money girl. And she's a former Olympian. Her name is LaVonne Idlette. And LaVonne, I want to welcome you to Pro Mindset today.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Okay, so we were just talking real quick off air that you participated in the 2012 Olympics as a 100-meter hurdler for the U.S., and then you competed for 10 years as a pro.
Yes.
Okay. So my question to you is, where is the transferability between the characteristics, the skill set, the discipline that you had to have as an athlete, elite athlete, that also applies and is relatable to people and how they handle their money?
Okay. So the real transferable skill is that every day you do something that you may or may not feel like doing. And it's all because you have the vision for what has to happen in the future. So you may be putting a little bit in the bank every day. That's what we call our workouts, bank deposits in the bank, so that in the future you'll have everything you need when that day comes that you're making that big investment, that big purchase, whatever the case may be, for whatever the vision was when you started out.
I like that. I like that. There's also a lot of work, especially as a track person. Yes, there's world championships and there's all these meets, but really everybody only watches the Olympics every 4 years, and they don't realize how much work you put in. Just like with your money, somebody cashes in on a nice investment, but they don't realize the financial sacrifices they may have made for decades to get to that point.
For sure. I talk about that all the time as it pertains to like the transferability from sports to people who end up selling companies. They work really hard for a very long time, generally not seeing all the fruit, and then you sell the company, which may or may not have been your identity, just like an athlete. So
I'm going to pause just here for a second, and I'm going to have Jose take this out. There's some clicking or something going on in your background.
Okay.
You can tell that we're, I'm not sure if it's your desk or something, but
Maybe. I'll stop touching.
Maybe. Okay. That's okay. It's called hitting the hurdles. You're hitting the hurdles.
Yes.
Okay. LaVonne, let's go back to, what is your story? When you meet people for the first time, like I'm meeting you today for the first time, and somebody says, girl, what's your story?
Generally, I'll say I happen to be a person who is an SEC attorney who went to the Olympics, who helps people with their wealth strategy in terms of privacy, asset protection, philanthropy, and where to put the money once you make it. But I grew up the child of a person who works all the time. So he is a real estate developer, and my mother owned salons. So they were always at work, and I sort of got the grooming to become an entrepreneur very young. I didn't appreciate it at the time. And I grew up in a very competitive environment where, like, my parents never said I couldn't do something. They would always say, okay, well, how are you going to do it? And so it created the problem solving and the information seeking person that I became in the future. But I also always want to win. But I actually hate losing more than I like it.
The great ones hate losing way more than they like winning.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So let's talk about money. I just have a couple questions I want to ask you. When you talk about like professional athletes or business owners and entrepreneurs that are coming into some money, whether they make it year to year or whether they sold a business, what is the number one thing that they have to do that they don't know? There's a lot of things they know.
Okay.
What is the invisible strategy, or what is the blind spot? Where are they going to get blindsided if they are not aware of this? What is this?
This is that there is no magic button, and that you need to learn to fail forward. So you have to let yourself be a novice again at something. And that is the process of figuring out what your next thing is and who you need to be to become it. So everybody comes to me looking for strategy and tactics and all of that. And I'm just like, everything works actually. Almost all types of investments work well if you have the right jockeys and all of that. But what do you care about? And like, what can you see yourself being so intrigued about that you get more information than the average person so that you can have that unfair advantage?
Okay. So to me, then it's more about who you are, your identity, and perhaps your passion than it is about your products that you invest in.
Exactly.
I like that. Okay, so let's talk about real estate. Let's say for example, someone's listening to this and they're like, man, I got some side cash. I want to do some investments in real estate. There are so many different ways you can invest in real estate. What is your general perspective on how people should dip their toes into real estate if they are a novice, they haven't been doing it, and they're passionate about it, they like it, and they want to do it?
So my number one advice is to get in the water. So you can't read books into swimming. You have to swim your way into swimming. But the way is whatever kind of asset class you're interested in, go and find out who's doing that well in your area. And then you come and add value to them and then ask to be a party to their next transaction so that you can learn en route, but with somebody who really knows what they're doing, but who also has skin in the game so that they're not just giving you blanket advice and, from the sidelines that they don't have to live with.
Yes. So it's very difficult to, going back to being an athlete, to listen to a coach that's never done it. You got a coach that never did track, never ran the hurdles, and they're trying to tell you how to count your steps between hurdles and whatever else you got to do in hurdles. And they've never done it. And you're like, I'm going to figure it out myself.
Because at the end of the day, once you become elite at something, whether that's business or sports, you realize what it takes. And it's like just doing the work. So it's hard to take advice from people who haven't had to do the work.
Makes sense. I'm assuming that through your years as a young girl and growing up in a household with competitive, hardworking parents, and then going to an elite level as an athlete, participating in the Olympics, the mindset principles, the habits, the discipline, your ability to not have fear of failure, things like that also show up when you went through the legal world and now that you're doing what you're doing in the money world. What are like your top 3 principles that are transferable in all those different scopes of life?
Okay. So number 1 is that discipline transcends everything. So just show up, just do what's required every day. It doesn't matter how you feel, no one cares. Number 2 is that belief is more important than anything. The person who believes they suck is right. The person who believes they're great is right. So you get way more from believing you are great than worrying about how much you suck. And then number 3 would be iron sharpens iron. So surround yourself with the best of the best of whatever it is you're trying to do, because it will help you get better faster.
I like that. Let's talk. I'm going to start with belief, though, because to me, belief is about who you are, not what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Confidence is about what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of coaches, a lot of people talk about belief and confidence like they're interchangeable. And arguably they can be. But belief is about who you are as a woman, who you are as a man, who you are as a person. Confidence is about what you do. Maybe you do the hurdles. Maybe you're an SEC attorney. Maybe you're a teacher. It doesn't matter what you do. It's the confidence of what you do. And if you're not confident, more reps, more practice, more gym time, more track field time, whatever it might be,
Yeah,
your confidence is going to go up. But I feel like your belief, because working with NFL guys, some guys just believe. Some guys are 99.9ers. They believe 99.9% of the time. They believe when everything's going good, they're good. But man, when it gets in a tight spot, lots of pressure, roster spots on the line, games on the line, whatever it might be, that's when that 1% shows up. What are your thoughts about belief and confidence, and how does that resonate in your career and in your sports career?
Yeah, I think that belief is remembering even when your back's up against the wall and you're down and you had a bad play and you did all of the things wrong, that you have the ability to figure it out, that you have the ability to get through it, and that you'll be fine. Belief. And you have to drill that belief into yourself over time, and sometimes trick yourself into believing even when you are scared to continue to act. I believe that confidence is definitely a muscle that is grown by proving to yourself that what you believe is true. And so every time you show up and it actually works, you're like, boom, more confidence. And that helps further the belief. But you're right, they are two separate thoughts.
Well, I think that I like the way you described that. Let's just take basketball. Believing that you're a good basketball player is important, but when you see the basketball go in the basket, your confidence is going to go up.
Mm-hmm.
But if you don't believe, if you don't feel worthy, if you don't feel like you belong, your belief is going to struggle. And if you don't believe in yourself, when you go against a person that's, let's say it's LeBron, you show up at the gym and there's LeBron, and you're playing one-on-one and that's your opponent, your confidence is going to struggle, but your belief should not.
Yeah.
Because if he doesn't guard you and you're shooting an 18-foot shot, it's the same 18-foot shot, whether there's nobody guarding you or whether LeBron's standing there.
Yeah. But I really believe that the confidence comes from the knowing you've done the work, that you put up 1,000 18-foot shots, regardless if LeBron or Steph or anybody is in your face, that if you come to the moment, you can do it because you put in the work, the doing.
So you think confidence is about earning? It's like earning and putting in the dark work, so to speak, of the reps, the discipline, the deposits that you talked about before. That builds confidence.
I believe so. You can't trick yourself into believing that you did the work that you know you didn't do. So then your confidence gets hit whenever something goes wrong.
Okay. So how do you reconcile in your mind if you show up for something that you haven't had an opportunity to practice, but you visualized it in your mind 1,000 times, which has happened to people? You know, I coached a Paralympian for Paris, and he went to the Olympic trials and only worked out one day because he had arthritis.
Really?
And he usually put in 4 to 6 hours a day, 5 days a week for months. And he didn't tell his opponents. He didn't tell anybody that he wasn't doing the work because he couldn't do the work.
Mm-hmm.
And he showed up at the Olympic trials because he did do work, but it was different work.
Mm-hmm.
It was visualization. And he was the #1 representative for our country through visualization. So how do you is mental work just as valuable as physical work?
Yes. So all of it is a portion of what is required. And so when a person has to go through a different type of work because of physical elements, mental elements, whatever the case may be, that's not negating the work. As long as something is being done in preparation, you know that you're doing all that you can do to get the result that you're looking for.
Let's go to discipline. It's like a dirty word. Nobody likes discipline.
Of course they do.
Nobody wants to have discipline. And it's the thing that people throw. Your partner throws it at you. Your coach throws it at you. Your teammates throw it at you. Man, if you just had a little bit more discipline, what does that mean?
For me, discipline is really like a superpower because it's only you versus you, and knowing that if you sometimes are foregoing something that you might like. For example, when you're an athlete, you can't eat certain things because you know that you're trying to make your weights, and you know every little thing matters. So having the discipline that says I don't need the chips or the cookies or to go out or have the drink is the superpower that you know that if you apply this to anything, and you show up and do it on a consistent basis that like no one can eat. So it's one of those things that like almost have to I test my discipline on a normal basis just to make sure that I am who I say I am.
It also builds your confidence.
Yes.
Builds your skills. I mean, it develops your skills, regardless of what you're doing. So how do you help someone who doesn't have great discipline? Let's say, for example, you're coaching a young girl who's got tremendous talent, and you're in that, you know, she sought you out, and she talked you into coming to the track to teach her how to run the hurdles. But she doesn't have any discipline. She went to sleepover the night before and stayed up all night, and she did, you know, all those type of things. How do you instill discipline in someone else?
I think that is a muscle that you have to grow. So you start with small activities that you just can do consistently. And I call them like habitual swaps. So if you are, like I used to work with little kids all the time, and they were used to having juice and soda. So I would say our first habitual swap is we're going to have water or coconut water. Whenever you think you need something sweet, we're going to have coconut water. Otherwise, we're going to have water. And we're going to mark it down every time. And creating that habitual swap made it easy. And eventually they were like, okay, I don't drink soda anymore. But you could do that with instant.
What are you currently doing what are you currently doing in your own life today that is a habitual swap that's taking something out of your routine or life that you need to get out? And what are you replacing it with?
Yeah, so my habitual swap is that I would get up in the morning in my one free hour when everybody was asleep still. And I would just like scroll the internet or something. And I swapped it with, I read a book in that time slot now because I'm looking for more information. So if I have 1 hour of free time, I would rather use it more productively. And so that's my current swap. I'm about 7 weeks into waking up every morning for 1 hour reading a book and not looking at social media as my first foray into the day.
No, that's real. That's real. I like that. Okay, let's talk about iron sharpens iron. I think everybody understands that, but what is maybe something that people don't think about when they think about iron sharpens iron and being surrounded by people and working with people that are good at what you want to be good at?
Yeah, I think that most people understand it from a cliche perspective, but when they get into the fire and realize that working with another person who is great also means that you're creating and helping someone who is a competitor of yours, it becomes a little bit of a mental battle. But that's a part of building your own confidence and your own belief that no matter how much you help someone else or however much someone helps you, you have the ability to become better just at the same pace or faster than someone else. And that it's better to help others because it's going to help you even more.
This is along the same lines. When you are able to help other people, that's when you've really got a commanding knowledge of whatever you're teaching. You know, regardless of whether it's sports or business or finance or whatever it might be. Okay, let's go into a phrase that you said early, which was jump in the water. What is that? I think I know, but tell me what jump in the water means.
It means that you have to do it. You have to be in activity. You have to be an action taker. And there isn't enough coaches, mentors, books, seminars, webinars for you to go to make you feel confident and ready to do it. So just do it. And then you'll learn more en route of the swim than reading a book about the swim anyway.
That is so true. That's probably why Nike made millions of dollars and sold lots of shoes for just do it.
Exactly.
Right? What do you think the reason why? I mean, I've done this in my life. I've done it both ways. I've jumped in head first and knew what I was doing, figured it out on the go. And I've also had situations where I've tiptoed around the water and didn't jump in the water and wanted to know everything about the water before I jumped in the water. And maybe I never did jump in the water. What is the psychological barrier that people have that causes them to look everywhere else for the water except in the pool?
Mm-hmm. So a person who I could say had analysis paralysis. So I would read and go, and I needed to know every single thing before I could ever jump out. But with trying things and confidence, you learn that no matter how much you prepare, something is going to happen. So having some knowledge, not just completely blindly jumping into water is just being foolish, but also realizing that you can't know it all in advance of being in the water. So learn a little, jump in the water, keep learning en route and like getting better is the mindset to adopt, that like you can get better by doing. And you will never know all the unknowns in advance. So being adaptable and building the mindset that you have the ability to figure things out and to be adaptable is the way to avoid just looking around the room acting like you don't see the water.
Okay. So you're a speaker. What is one of your what's your key message point when you speak?
The biggest message.
You may have multiple ones, but I want to know.
Okay, so number one is that asset protection is not a painkiller. It's a vitamin. What I mean by that is when people are going through something, someone is passing away, someone is getting divorced, that sort of thing, that's when they start thinking, oh man, I need to protect my assets. Or they've already been in an accident or something of that nature. And so I'm mostly speaking about how to take the vitamin, do the preliminary work of setting up your assets in a way that protects you from all of those eventualities so that they will hit you a little lighter and you won't need the painkiller.
You got it. And vitamins are like supplements too.
Yeah.
Why do we take supplements? To prepare ourselves for competition, to prepare ourselves for adversity, to prepare our bodies to get stronger.
Exactly.
That can handle more. And vitamins are the same thing. When you help people with their assets, what is the most frequent mistake they make? And you're just like, oh my God, and these people are smart people.
Yeah.
They've made a lot of money. What's the Achilles heel, or what's the mistake that a lot of people are making?
I'd say there's two. The number one is that you blindly trust people's credentials and or company and or status. So someone that you really know that they're successful and you're going to blindly take their advice or follow something they're doing. I have a lot of very smart people call me and say, oh, Bavaria avocado farm, I want to get in the avocado business. I'm like, she's a billionaire. Maybe she doesn't need to make any money. Let's look a little deeper before we just follow people's things. And the second is not paying attention to how things interplay, if that makes sense. So interplay meaning you're looking for the highest return, for example, but it also may come with the most fees, the most risk, some other levels or layers of things that you have not considered. For example, I live in Florida. I don't invest very much or ever in California because I purposefully don't live in California. I don't want to have to pay California taxes on the things. So, but a lot of people will just say, oh, they're getting great returns on this one thing, so I'm going to go there. And then by the time it's all said and done and the taxes are paid and the fees are paid, like you could have made that same return doing something with a lot less risk.
So they're not considering all the facts and circumstances surrounding an investment.
Yes.
And they're looking at gross returns and not net returns.
That's right. And no one talks about net returns because that's not as sexy.
They're not as big.
Yeah.
No doubt. Okay. Let's say there's a person out there that just came into some money. Could be an athlete that got a signing bonus. Could be, anybody in any field that just came into some money. What is like, and I'm not talking billions of dollars, I'm talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
What is like the first thing they should do from your perspective?
So for me, we start off by creating 2 lists. One list is the current things you're spending money on. And then your second list is what does your ideal lifestyle cost? And we break it down. What do you want to do? Things you've been doing, all of that kind of stuff, just like goals. And then we look at how much of that capital that you just received can be moved into a place that can create the cash flow to get us to first the number where we currently are, because we need to cover our lifestyle, but then how can we continue to build a plan around getting us to our ideal lifestyle in cash flow? Because you can't go broke if you don't spend the first.
Hey, amen. When people talk about passive income, that's what they're doing. They're spending just the income.
Mm-hmm.
They're not selling the asset. They're not killing the golden, whatever it's called. What if their ideal lifestyle costs or expense levels are way too high? How do you help people reframe, reset, realize that, having a private jet, you really don't need a private jet. How many times do you fly a year?
Yeah.
Type thing. How do you help people in that situation?
So I think those things are just about perspective and having experience then and things like that. And so I work with a lot of young people. So they think they want a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. So I usually have an event where they're able to go and experience the Ferrari or Lamborghini, most of which they will realize they're entirely too big to own it. But you don't know what you desire isn't what you desire until you've experienced it. And then I also am like my parents, which is probably won't ever tell you no, but I will say, how are we going to get there? What is our plan? We're not going to drive ourselves broke to own a jet, but if you live in a major city and you want to fractionally own a jet or own a jet that you can charter out for others so that it'll pay for itself, maybe. But it's about the perspective of how we look at paying for the things that we want and if we actually want them. Because once most people do things, they realize it's not all this, it's fun for the first day. The best boat.
Yeah, it's really tough if everybody, no question. You definitely want to rent a boat, no doubt. Well, I think the other thing that I would say along those lines is that once you start standing out, so let's say, for example, you have a $500,000 vehicle and you show up at the Target parking lot.
Yeah.
And no other vehicle's like more than $100K. Where are you going to park it? Okay. Some dude with a beat up pickup parks right next to your Lamborghini. You got a problem.
Yeah.
So it's like, it doesn't even fit. So it's like, that's the thing I tell guys all the time is like, be careful what you wish for because, they're just going to destroy your value. If you get an accident and somebody's uninsured, you're the one that's going to lose. Mm-hmm. Looks like I'm going to have somebody joining here. Okay, LaVonne, do you love money? Do you love competition? Do you love making an impact? What is saying that is your passion? What makes you get up in the morning? And, some people love money. Some people love what money can do for them. Mm-hmm. Some love helping people understand money. Mm-hmm. What is kind of your lane in that area?
I love the fact that money is a tool. I love the fact that I have a sticky sort of product that most people want to talk about. So if you can tell people that you can help make more money, you become very popular very easy. But what I'm really passionate about is showing people how to live the life that they want to live and that they don't necessarily have to do it on other people's terms. So if you are, let's say, an athlete, for example, and you can have enough investments to cover your lifestyle, now the light bulb goes off. Wait a minute. I don't have to keep playing. I can play if I want to, but it's not the only way I can earn money, which is how most people feel when they are athletes or entertainers and all of those things. It's just like, this is the only way I know how to make money. I got to go. I got to show up. I have to do all of these things. And so being able to be that person is like, okay, this is our pathway to not needing this job anymore. This is our pathway to doing exactly what you want to do with your time. This is our pathway to the freedom to say you are passionate about something, you can do that, as opposed to whatever you feel like you have to do. I am in the space in the season of teaching people how to feel like they get to do things and that they don't have to do anything.
So you are a freedom paver. You pave the ways for people's freedom.
I like it. I might gotta take you on the road. I gotta steal it.
You can steal it. Well, here's what I'm hearing from you, because I'm listening and I'm trying to visualize some things here. Is that everybody does something that creates wealth, but not everybody loves what they do the most. They love doing other things more.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can show them how to invest, and create a lifestyle utilizing the money they've already made, moving forward, they don't necessarily have to stay doing what they were doing. And that's the clear definition of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Get to do what you want, not what you have to do.
Exactly.
That's why a lot of doctors give up practicing medicine to do something else once they get to a point where they've got enough invested, they don't have to practice medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's other doctors that will practice medicine until they kick them out because they love it and they'll do it forever.
Mm-hmm. That's it.
Okay.
Life is just about choice. And so I want everybody to feel like they have choice.
You talk about privacy. How does that come in, and why is that important?
So privacy is your first line of defense for asset protection. If people don't know that you own things, you can't be targeted for the assets. And so obviously some people who are public figures, there's an assumption that you have things. But for the most part, we want to be shielding people from, number one, people having public access to where you live and how much money you make and what kind of assets you own, through reduction of your name in public records. But also the other thing is that most people who are frivolous lawsuit people go to the types of lawyers that will just look things up in public records and say, this person is worth suing, this person is not worth suing. You want to be on the not worth suing list because your things are not connected to your name.
Other people do that.
So most of it comes down to like how things are titled. So we like, number one, for asset protection in general, we like to have things in entities separated from you personally, and then having things titled in trust, whether they're revocable or irrevocable. They have different purposes, but a revocable trust is for privacy. It's literally so that the title on the property is not in your personal name, so that when someone looks it up for the public records that most states do have for different things, houses and buildings and businesses, it's not attached to you personally. It's attached to something that's disconnected, not like LaVonne Idlette revocable trust, because people do that. And I'm like, you've literally done the opposite of privacy. You told on your bill.
Yeah. Explain for everybody what the difference is between revocable and irrevocable trust.
So a revocable trust is something that you can change at any time during your life. Generally, you are the grantor, which is the person who creates the trust, and you are the trustee, which means that you are in control of it. It's a privacy mechanism that things are actually still in your name, still in your estate and all of that. But the layer that's for the public to see is the trust, and it becomes irrevocable at your death so that you can avoid probate. So that's why I think that there isn't a case that I'm say that people should not have a revocable trust just to avoid probate, because we don't like going to court and letting people who are not in your family or don't love you make decisions about where your assets go. But the other side is irrevocable, and that is when you are creating a trust, you are moving things out of your estate during your life. There's a gift being made or an exchange being made and moving the assets out of your name. The only caveat is once they're there, they're there. You cannot change it. You can't change who the beneficiaries are. You can't change anything about the document. So, and you will be naming a trustee to be in charge of making sure that the assets that you put over there are good performing and they could be making money for your beneficiaries and things like that. They can even sell them, but you don't have full control over the things once you move it to the irrevocable trust. So that if something were to happen, like a divorce or an accident or something where someone can sue you personally, they can never get the things that are inside of that irrevocable trust.
They can get to the assets held in a revocable trust.
Yes, because they're still your things. It's just with a different name.
Right on. So one of them is substance and one of them is appearance.
That's right.
Right? Because the irrevocable is substance. It's a substantive change of ownership of the assets. Where the revocable just appears to look different, but it's really the same.
Yes.
Okay, that's cool. Okay. What, for people that love real estate, they usually don't like the stock market.
Okay.
What is your perspective? Some people like both. What is your perspective on the best use of your cash, best investment vehicles, and why?
Okay. That is so hard. I would say it depends. It depends on how much money we're talking about, what kind of return you're looking for, what kind of timeline we're talking about. And if I had to say best bets across the board is find a person who's doing something great and co-invest with them. If you are a person who's like, I must own the thing 100% by myself, great. Do that. Find the best manager for that asset though, because it doesn't matter how good an opportunity is if you don't know how to manage it. The management of the thing actually makes all the money. Most people think it is I got a great deal. And I'm like, yes. But even the best deals can be ruined by people who don't know how to manage the asset and things like that. So we always want to be attaching ourselves to the information, the people who can execute the best. And I can't really compare that to the stock market because the stock market moves on market sentiment. So if you are a person who loves stocks and charts and things of that nature, you can do really well in the stock market by following the news because it moves the price of the stock regardless of how the business functions. So a lot of people look for that arbitrage because they are news followers and they're following what Congress is doing and all of that. But for me, that takes real focus as opposed to I live in an area. I know this area really well. I know what's coming up. I know what's being built and I know the areas that are up and coming. So it's easier for me to find the arbitrage in real estate because I'm just in the activity and in the know. So you want to go and invest where you are in the know. You have a little bit more information than someone else. That's the unfair advantage. Information is by far the best unfair advantage in the world. That's why Nancy Pelosi is super rich.
Good point. Good point. So it's really a game of information and arbitrage and managing it.
Or time. If you got plenty of time, you can do a lot of things. But, how much patience does one have?
Right. Okay, we're going to bounce around again. Let's go back to sports. As a woman who has gone to London and represented her country in the Olympics, what was your biggest headspace challenge as a competitor and as an athlete on that journey? Because you had to see yourself being an Olympian before you could ever be an Olympian. So at some point in time as a young lady, you had that dream, you had that vision. But there was not just literal hurdles that you had to jump over as a hurdler, but there were mental hurdles that you had to jump over on your way to London. What were those hurdles and how did you jump over them?
So the biggest thing about being in sports is realizing that you're never going to feel perfect. So the hurdles that you go through in the training, because track and field is not like football or basketball. So we spend a lot of money in the training, in the rehab, in the chiro, in all of those things before you ever make a dollar, before the season ever starts. And so going through day by day, not feeling great because this is life and your human body cannot really take 5 to 6 days of 4 and 5 hours of pounding without a little nizzle, a little pain, a little something. And mentally showing up every day to be as close to 100% in the deposits you're making, because you want your deposits to be full deposits, not partials. So I would say that the hardest thing is pushing through every little setback that happens, because you'll be in the best shape of your life and flip a hurdle over in the race. You'll be in the best shape of your life and get a little hamstring strain. And so being able to mentally bounce back, and even like the athlete that you were speaking about training, you have a, and you've got to show up to your mental training. You got to show up to your rehab and just know that belief is going to work out. You just got to keep showing up. And so for me, I was in law school when I went to the Olympics. So I was doing a dual hard thing, but in discipline. 9 to 1, I'm at practice. 1 to 6, I'm in class. Then I go get a massage, eat some dinner, rinse and repeat every day. And so just reminding myself that this is what's required, no matter how I felt, was the hurdle. Because every day there's like, you have the good angel that's your discipline, and then you have the other angel that's like, F this. You can go and work on Wall Street. You already have an MBA. You know what I'm saying? And so it's one of those, like, tell the devil to get off your shoulder so that you can show up full enthusiasm, which is why, like, I believe that it's very easy to brainwash yourself into belief and like just pushing through. Because, for example, I tricked myself into liking to work out in the rain, because I know that everybody else hates working out in the rain. Everybody else hates racing in the rain. And I got Oakleys that were very bright and make it look like sun outside, and I've run through the heated rain workout. No complaints. I'm not even going to stop and acknowledge it. But you have to mentally push yourself to that point.
You tricked yourself into thinking that it was sunny when it was rainy. So my question is, how many important races did you go through where it was rainy and you had a competitive advantage because the other girls are thinking, oh my God, I might slip, I might fall, it's cold, it's wet, and you were like, this is what I trained for? Did that ever show up?
All the time. And so I got the standard for either a world championship or the Olympics at a race that was in some place in Canada. It was super cold. It was raining. And mind you, I was in Miami. I do not train in the cold. So all I'm thinking is, you got to get warm. Doesn't matter what's going on. And I end up running one of the fastest times in the world and getting the standard for whatever championship was that year. And it just comes down to, like, the elements are the elements. But at the end of the day, I'm running the same race. 100 meters, there are 10 hurdles, they are 8.5 meters apart.
Okay, so how does that show up in your life today? What are you training for right now? What is the reign that you're training for right now to give you a competitive advantage in business as an SEC attorney and doing what you do?
Yeah, so I don't know if I have a reign, but I will say that, like, age is unforgivable. I may feel fine most of the time, but like my normal, which is I show up. I'm going to be at 2 conferences a month. I'm going to show up to the networking events. I'm going to throw my own events. I'm going to show up online. And I have a toddler and other older kids and a husband and things going on in the business, but I'm going to show up. So the reign is, how do I feel? Like, how tired are you? How mentally exhausted are you? How much of your social battery feels like having a conversation, but like pushing through it and being like, it doesn't matter. I'm taking the overnight flight to LA. I'm going to get off the plane and go straight to the event. And I'm going to kill it on stage and make the relationships that I need to make for the clients that I have and for the future clients that I will meet at this event.
That's awesome. That's awesome. How many kids do you got?
3.
Are any of your children, what ages?
2, 8, and 12.
2, 8, and 12. So the 2-year-old, they're still trying to figure out. With 8 and 12, they're already showing their personalities, their passions, their intentions, things like that. What have you been able to share as a mom and pass on to your 8 and 12-year-old and probably your 2-year-old as well, that is going to pay dividends for them when they aspire to be an attorney or they aspire to be an athlete or something else?
Yeah, that the only things that you can control are your controllables, which are how you show up, being consistent, and the attitude that you have when you arrive. So I focus on that 100%. So even like I may not be a stickler for necessarily what the grade is per se, but I'm going to say, did you give full effort? Did you do all of the work that was required for the class and preparing for the class or preparing for the test? And if you can answer that affirmatively, then I'm not going to give you any slack. But if you know that you didn't do those things and you weren't consistent and you didn't show up with a good attitude, then you have a problem. And so I focus on those things because you can only control your controllables. You don't know what's going to be on the test. You don't know if it's going to be a trick question. You don't know if you're going to win the race or the match because they play, well, the 8-year-old plays tennis and the 12-year-old does competitive competitive cheerleading. And you don't know what you're going to get from anybody else, but you can only control you. So did you do everything?
So you are getting them to focus on the input and not on the outcome.
Yes.
Because the outcome, there's just adversity and surprises and competition and different things that pop up that you have no control over. But you can control your input and how you show up, how prepared you were, how much effort you put into whatever exercise it is, whatever event it is. That's really important. How do you feel about as a mom allowing your kids to have small failures?
I want them to have them as often as possible because you don't learn very much from perfection and you almost create a bad ego when all you do is win. So I like to see okay, this happened. Okay, so tell me how you're going to get over it. How are we going to fix it? What is going to be the process? And I don't want to participate in the process. I want you to figure it out on your own.
Yeah, that's the thing I see from parenting is not wanting your kids to fail. And it really handicaps your children. Because like if the kids just ran out to school, maybe they rode their bikes to school, jumped on a bus, or whatever the case may be, and their homework is sitting on the kitchen table. They left it on the kitchen table. I would say 95% of parents are going to drive that homework to school to make sure their little Johnny doesn't get penalized for not doing the homework when he really did the homework. What's thoughts on that? What would you do?
So for me, it is, you have to do it and you have to turn it in. Those are both a part of the assignment for you. I don't want to participate in your process. I am not in school with you. And so I'm not bringing the homework. You will have to take the 0 or the penalty or whatever the case may be. You better explain your case. I'm not showing up to the school to argue for your lack of paying attention, because if it was something that mattered to you, you would have made sure those headphones was in that backpack. You would have made sure that tennis ball was in that backpack. So for me, everything is about teaching them to be more conscious of what's important, because I can't save you from everything. You forgot your t-shirt that you were supposed to have to go and get a bag late. Sorry to hear that. Why'd you call me? I'm not coming.
Okay, Mom. You're my mom. I'm in high school, and I call you real quick, and I say, hey, I left my homework on the kitchen table. Can you picture text it to me? Because I can print it out at the library and turn it in on time. What are you doing? I'm being resourceful now.
I think that actually might get me to do it, only because that is a solution. more so
is a
than they
solution.
do something for me. So I might do the picture text so that you can print it
Okay.
and do it. I'm not driving, and I'm not going to make any excuses for you to the teacher.
I got you.
Yep.
LaVonne, I want to thank you very much for being on Pro Mindset. Is there anything you would like to add today?
No, I appreciate you having me. I thought it was a great conversation, and I hope that we added some value to people who are building their pro mindset.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, the book is out, Pro Mindset. If you want to get it, you got to go to craigdelman.com and pick up your copy. And I want to thank you for joining me today, LaVonne. I want to thank you for your perspective. You've had an interesting journey. I can tell you're an awesome mom. And I want to thank everybody for listening today.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Hey, it's Craig Dillman, the host of Pro Mindset Podcast. I want to thank you for listening or watching today's show. And you can catch us every week on the normal social media platforms like YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all the listening podcast platforms. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And more importantly, I hope you gained a pro mindset insight. Please be sure to rate and review Pro Mindset Podcast. And I look forward to catching up with you on our next show.